Hello students, welcome to AriserTalent. As you know, we are studying very important chapter, management of natural resources. In my previous lecture, I taught you about the different forms of natural resources. I taught you about their classification. Now we are going to talk about the conservation of natural resources. Okay, today topic of discussion is conservation of natural resources. What do you mean by this conservation? Conservation means to protection. Okay, but here as we are talking about the conservation of natural resources, so all we know that we use natural resources as human has great mind, it uses natural resources for his benefits. Okay, so here we need to conserve these natural resources. Why? What is the meaning of conservation? So conservation here is the controlled utilization of natural resources for the benefits of life to yield sustainable forms for present generation and as well as for the future generation. Okay, so here we are going to talk about conservation means controlled utilization of natural resources for the benefits of the life forms. Okay, if we will control its utilization, then only we can preserve it for the future generation, as we can use it in the present generation as well as we can preserve it for the future generation. So this is the meaning of conservation. So here we are talking about the conservation of natural resources. Now why do we need to do this conservation? As I here itself told you that conservation is required. Why? Because we want to increase the quality environment. Okay, and as well as we want to improve the yield of plants and animals. Okay, so this is the aim of conservation. Fine, now we are going to talk about that. As I told you, this was the what is the meaning of conservation here. Now I am going to tell you categories of conservation. Categories of conservation. What are the categories of conservation? Generally, conservation can be done by two forms. One is in situ conservation and next is ex situ conservation. Okay. If we talk about number one, in situ conservation, what does it mean? In situ conservation means when the conservation of natural resources is done in their natural habitat, then it is known as in situ conservation. Okay, for example, national parks. Here I can mention when the conservation of natural resources is done in their habitat. Okay, then it's known as in situ conservation. For example, national park, wildlife sanctuaries. Okay. Next is ex situ conservation. When the conservation of natural resources is done outside their habitat, then it's known as ex situ conservation. Next is ex situ conservation. What is ex situ conservation? When the conservation of natural resources is done outside their habitat. Okay, then it's known as ex situ conservation. Means conservation means, I told you, means protection. Okay, but here as we are talking about to preserve natural resources, then how can we do it? We can do it by controlling the utilization of natural resources. So here the meaning of conservation is that controlled utilization of natural resources for the benefits of the life forms. Clear? Now what is the aim of conservation? The aim of conservation is to increase the number of quality environment, to increase the quality environment, as well as they want to improve the yield of plants and animals and the material which we get from them. Clear? So that is the aim of conservation. Now what are the categories of conservation? Generally there are two types. Conservation is of two types. One type of conservation is done inside the natural habitat, and one type of conservation is done outside the natural habitat. Okay, so here it is in situ conservation and ex situ conservation. Now how can we do this conservation? Okay, so we can do this conservation by following 3Rs rule. Here we studied what is conservation, what is the aim of conservation, what are the categories of conservation. Now we are going to talk about how can we do the conservation. So we can do the conservation of natural resources by 3 ways. What are they? That is known as 3Rs ways. Next is ways to conserve natural resources. So generally it is done by the 3Rs. Why it is known as 3Rs? What are 3Rs? They are, what are they? Reduce. Next is reuse. And the third one is recycle. Okay, we can preserve, or we can say, I must say, we can conserve the natural resources by following these 3Rs. What are they? Reduce, reuse and recycle. What do you mean by reduce? Reduce means to use less. Reduce means to use less, means here we have to decrease the level of using of natural resources. How can we do that? We can do it by the following ways. Suppose if you are not sitting in the room, so light is on, fan is on, what should you do? You should switch off them. This is the way to reduce the use of electricity, and we all know generally electricity is made by water. So water is what? Water is natural resource. So electricity is connected to water here. So if you will reduce the use of electricity, you will conserve the natural resource, that is water. For either example, if we talk about if you are in the bathroom and you are shaving or you are brushing, what should you do? You should turn off the running tap. Okay, so that in this way you can reduce the use of water here. Okay, now let's talk about reuse. Things which you have already used, you have to use them again. So what is the meaning of reuse? As the name itself defines use, you have already used it, now you are using it again. Okay, so reuse means to use the used articles again and again. Again and again. Okay, for example, if you are using a plastic container, you bought it from the market, you bought some item in that, you bought something, some edibles in that. Now it is, you have already used it. Now what you will do it? You can use that plastic container to store other items. You can wash it, you can use it to store other items. Okay, so here we can say that whatever items, articles are already used, you have to use them again. This is the meaning of reuse. Besides throwing them into the garbage, we can reuse them. In this way, we can protect the natural resources. Okay, as for the other example, paper, we should use both the side of the paper. Okay, so here we can reduce the use of paper. Even we all know that paper is made by the pulp of wood. Okay, so if you will reduce the use of it, you will utilize both the sides of paper, then you can protect a tree from its cutting. Fine. So here we have talked about reduce and reuse. Now other important point is recycle. What is recycle? Recycle means once you have already used that thing, now you cannot use it more. Okay, then what you will do? You will send it to the factories to recycle it. For example, plastic, paper, glass. Okay, we can recycle them. For example, if you used plastic bag, you used plastic bucket, now it is of no use. What you should do? You should set them to the factory so that they can mold it, they can melt it and can mold it into the another form, and you can reuse it. Okay, so all these things like reduce, reuse and recycling are connected to each other. The meaning is that we can conserve the natural resources by following these three RS rule. What are? Reduce, reuse and recycle. For example, what can we do in recycle? Plastic, paper, whatever papers we have used, we can send them to the units which can convert them into the new form. Okay, so plastic, paper, glass, metal, etc. So these are the ways by following them we can conserve the natural resources. Fine. Now we will talk about forest and wildlife conservation. Next is forest and wildlife conservation. As we all know, forest and wildlife are connected to each other. Okay, forest means a large area where plants grow. Okay, plants and trees grow, as well as all the wildlife, different forms of wildlife are found here in the forest. Means thus we can say forest maintains an ecological balance in the ecosystem. Okay, why? Because it is a home for many living organisms like insects, microorganisms, flowering plants, trees, other plants. Okay, so thus we can say that this forest maintains an ecological balance. It maintains an ecological balance in the ecosystem. Thus, we can say that forests are very essential. It maintains an ecological balance in the ecosystem. Okay, why? Because it consists many forms of lives like trees, plants, flowering plants, microorganisms, animals, different types of animals, insects, all the forms of, means thus we can say that all the biodiversity is found here in the forest. So, thus we can say that the forest and wildlife are connected to each other. Fine. Now, let us talk about deforestation. What is deforestation? Forestation means a large area where a good amount of trees and plants are there. Deforestation means reduction of forest cover. So, here what is deforestation? Deforestation means reduction in deduction in forest cover. Okay. What are the causes of this deforestation? Why do we need to do it? So, causes, if we talk about the causes of deforestation, then there are many causes. We need many useful things from them, like we need drugs, means medicines, okay, we need paper, we need edibles from them. So, here we can say that we need generally deforestation is done by the human, because what are the causes? We get many things from them, okay. So, here let me mention what are the causes of deforestation. Number 1, to get edibles, that is food, okay, to make what, or we can mention here to conserve, to get edibles or to get wood, medicines, etc. Okay. Beside it, generally many times when we want to construct some canals, then also deforestation is done, okay, to construct canals, etc. And sometimes deforestation is also done by overgrazing. Beside it, sometimes we also study in the newspaper and we listen it about the deforestation in the news also. What is another cause of that? That is forest fire. Okay, we all listen about it in the newspaper and news channels. Beside it, so these are the main causes for the deforestation, okay. And sometimes people do it for to get the land for agriculture, okay, to get agricultural land or to get land for construction, and agriculture. Okay, so these are the main causes of deforestation. Now, as we are talking about the forest, so let me tell you what are the benefits of this forest. Here we can mention it is productive, it is protective, and it is regulative. What are the main features of forest? It is productive, then it is protective, and another form is it is regulative. Regulative. Now, what do you mean by productive? As we are talking about productive, what do you mean by productive here? Productive means, as I told you, that forest give us what? Many edibles like food, wood, okay. So, and as well as it give us many medicines, drugs. So, thus we can say that forests are productive. As I told you in the starting itself, that many types of trees and plants are found in the forest, okay. So, here thus it is productive because it provides what? It provides food, medicines and wood like timber, okay. Protective. Now, let's talk about protective. Protective, as I told you, that wildlife is found here in the forest. Forest means dense, populated area. Okay, so as it is dense populated area where n number of variety of trees and plants are found, as well as wild life is also found there, like all the animals, insects, other organisms are found there. So it is a protective layer. It protects from the pollution. It protects from air pollution and sound pollution. Okay, so we can say that the forests are protective. Next is regulative. How they are regulative? As I told you, when we have studied about the geochemical cycles also, that these plants help to regulate the geochemical cycles. Okay, so here we can mention that it helps in regulation of biogeochemical cycles. We have already studied about biogeochemical cycles in class 9th. Okay, so here I must say that what are the functions of this forest? Function of the forest are, it is productive because it provides us variety of food, medicines and wood. It is a protective layer, like it protects from air pollution and sound pollution, as well as it is a regulative because it is a regulative layer as it helps in the regulation of biogeochemical cycle. So, this is all about the what? Conservation of forest and wildlife. That what is forest? That it maintains an ecological balance in the ecosystem. Then what is deforestation? What are the causes of deforestation? As here I told you, what are the causes of deforestation? Now, how can you protect this deforestation? Then we can do it by the afforestation, by growing the n number of variety of plants at the same area where already the deforestation is done. Okay. So, here I told you about the forest and how the deforestation is done. Now, next is, as we are getting so many benefits from forest, so we need to conserve them, and the conservation of forest can be done by the afforestation. This is the main way, I must say this is the best way to conserve the forest. Next is conservation of forest. Generally, it is done by afforestation. What is afforestation? Planting of indigenous or exotic species of plants to develop forest. Okay, so this is the best way to conserve the forest. We can do it by the afforestation, means the place where the deforestation is done, we can regrow the plants, means we can plant more number of species at the same place, okay, and thus we can protect the forest. Clear? So here in this lecture we studied about the natural resources. In this we studied about the forest and wildlife. Earlier we studied about the what? We studied about the different parts of conservation, means what is conservation, how to do the conservation, okay, and why do we need to do it. Fine, then we talked about the forest and wildlife. In this lecture we talked about forest, that why are forests important to us, okay, and how they get harmed by the human activities, as well as how can we conserve the forest. Okay, hope it is clear to you. Thank you.